Okay, now I'm going to show you how we're going to work through the rest of this color chart. These are going to be color mixtures, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different color mixtures, and this is just going to touch the surface of color mixing, but it's going to help you to kind of figure out the process for color mixing and getting the color you want. And so what we're going to do is we're going to mix two colors, but we're going to mix them in stages. So for this first one, I'm going to have ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I just kind of abbreviated here. You're going to use up 7 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not really going to use these spaces here. So in the first space, we're just going to put the color as is without anything mixed with it other than white. I want to light, especially with these with the darker colors, just like we did on our color chart up here, the burnt umber and the ultramarine. We want to add a little bit of white to them so that it kind of illuminates them. You can see the effect of the color mixture a little bit more. If we took two dark colors and just mixed them, you're not going to see it so dark, you're not really going to see the effect of what the color mixing. Okay, so I'm going to take my ultramarine blue, and I'm going to take a bit more this time, probably getting to the point where I should really use my palette knife so that I'm getting close to the ferrule there, and I don't want to clog up my bristles. So I'm going to use this, and I need to grab some more white, but I have a little bit left here. I don't need too much. Grab a little bit of white, throw it in there. And when you mix up your paints, let me get that on the camera a little bit better. Try to keep everything in a pile. You don't want to start spreading your paints too thin because then they dry out too fast on you. Plus you end up using too much of your palette. So try to, as you move them, use the tip of your palette knife and kind of spread them around, push them down, pick them up, layer them on top of one another, almost kind of like kneading dough if you've ever done that. Okay. And I'm going to be frugal here and really use up so I've got a bunch of paint on my knife, so I'm just going to spread that into this square a little bit just so I don't waste that paint. And maybe I'll just spread it with my knife. Okay, and I'm going to take this paint that's on here and scoop it off of there, put it back into here so I can continue to use it. And I'm just going to throw my knife in the water real quick and I'll wipe that off later. Okay, and then I'll just kind of spread that a little bit thinner right here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my palette knife, wipe that clean now. So the paint, I left it in the water so the paint didn't dry on my knife. And then it's easier to just wipe off with a paper towel later on. Now I'm going to grab some of the burnt umber because that's the color I'm going to mix with this. And that's starting to get a skin on it too. I don't need too much, maybe just a tad bit more. I'll spread that over there. I didn't use my brush because I want to keep the blue on my brush. Wipe off my palette knife. Now the reason I'm bringing my brown over here so I can start adding a little bit of, let me get that on camera, add a little bit of brown, a little bit at a time. So when I spread it over here a little bit thinner, it's easier to grab small amounts because I just want to incrementally, in small amounts, change this ultramarine blue by adding small amounts of burnt umber to it. So the first one, and I'm not going to mix the whole pile. I'm going to reserve that. You always want to reserve some of your original mixture in case you want to use it for something else. So when I get here towards the other end where I'm using more burnt umber, I might scoop some of that and add it to my burnt umber. So I'm going to give a little bit of burnt umber, change it just a little bit, and then I'll push this back up a little bit. I'm running out of space here. And I'm going to paint that swatch. I almost feel like I could use a little bit more white to really illuminate that. There we go. That's better. Grabbing some white, throw it in there. Paint that swatch. Okay, it's going to get darker, so I'm going to add some even more white. I want to see what that looks like. You know, if it's too dark, I'm getting old, my eyes. Okay, now I'm going to grab a little bit more burnt umber. Add it to it. Change it a little bit more, maybe test it. Does that look a bunch different? And any of these, if when you're done you don't like it, how it came out, let it dry and you can paint right over it. Okay. All right, it keeps getting darker, so I'm gonna, because I keep adding another dark color to it. So I'm adding some more white. I'm gonna add some more brown. Now in the middle, it's gonna be almost gray. Okay, because blue and ultramarine blue and brown are like opposites on the color wheel. I really need some more white. I don't feel like stopping to go get my paint, or my tube of paint. I don't have it right with me. Okay, so there you go. So I don't know how well that's showing up on the camera, but it's stepped down. It changed it a little bit from here, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. Now on the other end, we can start with the burnt umber and do the same thing and start adding little bits of blue to it, stepping it the other way. So I'm going to grab some more burnt umber over here. Just going to throw that in the water. Hopefully I have enough white left. Over here. Pull some burnt umber to the side. Add some white to it to lighten it up. Paint in that first swatch. Now I'm going to start adding little bits of blue to that. Paint the next swatch. Add a little bit more blue. And paint another swatch. And what you're going to see with these two colors is they both move towards gray, because in this case we're mixing complements, opposites, and when you mix opposites they neutralize one another. So on this side with the little bit more brown in it, we have what's called a warm gray, and on this side over here with a little bit more blue in it, it's like a cool gray. And then the one in the middle ideally should be kind of neutral, somewhere in between the two. And that's what you're going to do with each color as you move down here. They're not always going to turn gray, but you're going to have the two extremes, and then they're going to move towards one another. And you know, you're always mixing a little bit of the one with the other and increasingly adding more, and then you start on the other end and you add a little bit of the other color increasingly more until you get kind of a halfway point in the center between the two colors. And you'll continue that all the way down and use the same process for all the colors, all the color mixtures, that is.